The fabric of reality within the universe of the living was never meant to cross coordinates with the baseline frequency of the immediate murder professionals. In the high-altitude, desolate badlands of Earth, Son Goku stood in a deep-rooted martial arts stance, the air around his boots rippling with waves of translucent, golden heat. He had been pushing the absolute thresholds of his physical engine for 3 consecutive days, seeking a breakthrough in his sensory awareness that went beyond standard cosmic energy detection. Every deep inhalation drew raw nitrogen into his lungs. Every explosive exhalation shattered the structural integrity of the surrounding granite cliffs. Goku concentrated his focus on a singular, hypothetical point in space, intending to execute an instant transmission that bypassed physical space entirely. He raised 2 fingers to his forehead, his knuckles white with tension as his golden aura suddenly flared with jagged, high-contrast crimson sparks, a residual side effect from his previous universal displacements. The energy did not snap cleanly. Instead, the spiritual friction generated by his divine cells caught on a microscopic structural anomaly in the atmosphere, a thin tear in the dimensional fabric that had been left behind by a poorly calibrated, ancient dark magic artifact. The space directly in front of Goku's face did not merely warp. It collapsed inward like an imploding vacuum star, producing a deafening, metallic tearing sound that echoed across the empty valleys. A jagged, 5-sided rift erupted into existence, bleeding thick, viscous trails of neon purple and pitch-black smoke that instantly smothered his golden light. Before his nervous system could register the mechanical failure of the technique, an immense, multi-ton gravitational pull latched onto his orange gi, dragging his heavy, dense, muscular frame headfirst into a swirling, non-Euclidean vortex of pure crimson static. Meanwhile, deep within the grimy, smoke-choked sprawl of Imp City in the Pride Ring of Hell, the office of IMP was experiencing its usual brand of chaotic structural degradation. Blitzo was currently balanced precariously on the edge of his stained mahogany desk, violently gesturing with a heavily customized, flintlock-inspired demonic pistol while screaming at a whiteboard covered in crude marker drawings. The air in the room was thick with the acrid stench of cheap sulfur, stale coffee, and the metallic tang of dried blood from their previous afternoon run to the living world. Luna was slouched deeply into her broken swivel chair behind the reception counter, her gray and white fur matted in sections, her blood-red eyes entirely locked onto the glowing screen of her cracked smartphone as she aggressively scrolled through an underground hellhound social media feed. She completely ignored Blitzo's high-pitched, manic lecture regarding their dwindling quarterly assassination metrics and the rising cost of illegal portal maintenance. Moxie and Millie sat on the threadbare couch across the room, the former frantically correcting a stack of paper invoices, while the latter casually sharpened a massive, serrated hunting knife on her boot leather. The mundane domestic violence of the office was instantly shattered when the circular, glowing red sigil of the Asmodean portal book, resting on a pedestal in the center of the room, began to spin counterclockwise at a violent, unnatural velocity. The clean, fiery orange sparks that normally accompanied Luna's portal casting were aggressively replaced by a series of high-pitched, digital screeches and blinding flashes of hypersaturated cyan electricity. Blitzo tumbled backward off the desk, his long, curved black and white horns clattering against the floor tiles as the room's atmospheric pressure dropped to a suffocating degree. The central air conditioning unit bolted to the wall exploded in a shower of black soot and sparks, unable to handle the sudden, massive influx of alien kinetic energy. Luna dropped her phone, her ears pinning flat against her skull as her predatory instincts kicked in, her jaws snapping open to reveal rows of razor-sharp white teeth as she snarled at the expanding anomaly. The portal did not open smoothly. It tore through the ceiling plaster, sending chunks of gray concrete raining down onto the floorboards. The rift widened into a jagged, bleeding wound in the middle of the room, and with a thunderous, bass-boosted boom that blew out every glass window pane in the building block, a massive, muscular figure in a shredded orange and blue martial arts uniform was violently ejected from the vortex. Goku crashed onto the floor with the force of a falling meteor, his dense body instantly splintering the hardwood floorboards and sending a massive cloud of gray dust, white plaster, and purple static particles billowing outward to coat every surface in the office. The dust cloud hung heavy in the air, illuminated only by the flickering red glow of the neon sign outside the shattered windows. Blitzo was the first to move, coughing violently as he waved a slender, red-skinned hand through the soot, his yellow eyes wide with a mixture of furious irritation and intense professional curiosity. He raised his pistol, aiming it directly through the haze at the center of the crater, where Goku was slowly pushing himself up onto his hands and knees. Goku shook his head, his spiky black hair full of plaster dust, his mind spinning as he tried to analyze the atmospheric composition of his new surroundings. The air here was heavy, greasy, and saturated with an overwhelming sulfurous energy that felt inherently hostile to life, completely unlike any sector of the living universe he had ever visited. He looked down at his palms, noting that while his body had retained its natural, organic fluid line art, the shadows casting across his skin were deeper, grittier, and possessed a harsh, cinematic contrast that matched the dark, urban aesthetic of the underworld. "What in the unholy, non-consensual hell did you just drop into my office, Luna?" Blitzo shrieked, his voice cracking as he stepped over the debris, keeping his weapon trained on Goku's forehead. "If this is another one of your weird, muscular, homeless boyfriends from the surface world, I swear to Satan I am docking your monthly phone data allowance." Luna stood up from her desk, her long tail swaying aggressively as she stepped out into the open, her eyes narrowing as she studied Goku's massive physique. She could smell the sheer, unadulterated physical power radiating off his skin, an energy that didn't smell like a human soul, a demon, or an angel, but something entirely alien, clean, and dense enough to warp the local gravitational field. "Shut the fuck up, Blitz," Luna snapped, her voice a low, gravelly growl that vibrated in her throat. "I didn't open that damn thing. The book just glitched out on its own, and that guy, he doesn't smell like anything from the living world target list." Goku finally stood up to his full height, casually brushing the white plaster dust off his shoulders, his expression transitioning from initial confusion to a bright, wide, completely unbothered grin as he looked at the strange, colorful creatures standing before him. "Whoa," Goku said, his voice light and conversational despite the apocalyptic entrance he had just made. "You guys look really weird. Are you some kind of new aliens from the lower galaxies? Or did I accidentally step into King Kai's hidden basement?" The silence that followed Goku's casual question was thick enough to choke a lesser demon. Blitzo stared at the towering mortal, his finger twitching on the trigger of his flintlock, his brain struggling to process the absolute lack of fear radiating from this giant stranger. Normally, when humans or lost souls accidentally manifested in the Pride Ring, they spent the first 10 minutes screaming, crying, or begging for mercy before the local cleanup crews could partition their belongings. This man, however, was standing in a crater of shattered concrete, surrounded by heavily armed, red-skinned contract killers, and he was smiling as if he had just strolled into a neighborhood grocery store. Moxie crept out from behind the flipped couch, his small, black and white horns trembling as he raised a tactical crossbow, his eyes darting between Goku's massive bicep definition and the strange, lingering golden particles that still drifted around his boots like glowing dandelion seeds. "Sir," Moxie whispered hoarsely, his voice trembling with bureaucratic terror. "According to the Underworld Penal Code, Section 4, unauthorized cross-dimensional manifestation by a living biological entity carries an immediate summary execution sentence. We are legally obligated to liquidate him." "Liquidate him?" Blitzo barked, not breaking eye contact with Goku. "Moxie, look at the gi, look at the hair. This guy looks like he escaped from a high-budget foreign comic convention, or he's some kind of undercover celestial hitman sent by my ex-wife to ruin my Tuesday." Blitzo stepped closer, the tip of his gun barrel now inches away from Goku's nose. "All right, listen here, sunshine. I don't care if you're a god, a demon, or a very aggressive cosplayer who took a wrong turn at the portal station. You just broke my ceiling, you ruined my whiteboard layout, and you are currently breathing my highly expensive, toxic office oxygen. Who sent you, and what is your target?" Goku didn't flinch. He casually reached out with a single finger, tapping the side of Blitzo's pistol barrel. The slight, effortless motion possessed so much latent kinetic mass that the metal barrel of the gun instantly bent downward at a perfect 90-degree angle, rendering the mechanism entirely useless. Blitzo stared down at his ruined weapon, his jaw dropping so low his chin nearly struck his collarbone, while Millie let out a sharp, appreciative whistle from the back of the room. Luna stepped forward, her massive canine paws clicking sharply against the exposed floor joists. She stopped 3 feet away from Goku, her towering height as a hellhound allowing her to look him almost dead in the eye. She leaned in, her black nose twitching aggressively as she took a deep, investigative sniff of his clothes. There was no scent of sin on him, no corruption, no malice, no spiritual rot that defined every single resident of the 9 rings. Instead, he smelled of clean ozone, roasted wild boar, and an internal thermal energy that felt like a miniature, contained star operating inside his chest cavity. "He's not a target, Blitz," Luna stated, her tone shifting from aggressive hostility to a tense, analytical curiosity. "His soul. It isn't registered in the Underworld database. I can't see a life thread or a damn death date on him. He's completely off the grid." Goku chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck as his stomach suddenly let out a massive, low-frequency rumble that vibrated the remaining glass fragments in the window frames. "Man," Goku said, his smile turning slightly embarrassed. "All that training always makes me so hungry. You guys wouldn't happen to have any food around here, would you? I can pay you back later, I promise. I've got some great capsule technology back home if I can just figure out which way home is." Blitzo threw his ruined gun over his shoulder, throwing his hands up in the air in an expression of pure, theatrical defeat. "Oh, fantastic! A dimension-hopping, gun-breaking super immortal who wants a sandwich. Wonderful. Luna, clean up your desk. We're taking this giant problem down to the lobby before the neighborhood overlords notice the power grid dipping." Luna rolled her eyes, but she didn't look away from Goku. For the first time in months, something had occurred in this miserable city that actually managed to break through her deep, protective layer of apathy. She reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone to take a quick, high-contrast photo of Goku's energy signature, watching the digital camera sensor glitch an artifact as it tried to process the gold and black contrast of his presence. "Come on, big guy," Luna muttered, turning her back to him but gesturing with her head toward the exit. "Let's get you out of the office before Moxie has a literal stroke from the paperwork." Goku followed her gladly, his massive boots stepping over the ruins of the IMP headquarters, entirely unaware that his arrival had already sent a massive, high-contrast shockwave through the deep, dystopian surveillance networks of the Pride Ring. The absolute absurdity of Goku's presence completely derailed the standard morning routine of the immediate murder professionals, turning the cramped office into a chaotic circus within minutes. M&M, Moxie and Millie, the agency's married field operatives, had burst into the reception lobby with their weapons drawn after hearing Blitzo's frantic screaming and the subsequent heavy locking of the door, expecting to find a high-level sinner threat or perhaps an angry loan shark from the greed ring. Instead, they found themselves standing in an absolute state of bewilderment, staring at the physical manifestation of an impossible reality, anomaly happily seated on their floor. Moxie, a short, highly neurotic imp wearing a formal tuxedo that always seemed slightly too tight for his anxious frame, was currently adjusting his glasses while frantically flipping through a thick, leather-bound binder of interdimensional law codes and demonic spatial treaties. His tail was twitching with an unprecedented level of immense anxiety, threatening to knock over a stack of files, as he looked from his complex charts to the massive, orange-clad human entity. Goku was sitting cross-legged on the linoleum, completely oblivious to the panic he was causing, focused entirely on happily devouring a stack of 7 entire frozen pizzas that Millie had quickly warmed up using a small, handheld flamethrower she usually reserved for stubborn targets. The sight was surreal, a being of supreme multiversal power eating bargain bin pepperoni slices in a dingy reception area. "Sir, I must insist that we address this situation with the gravity it requires, as this is a catastrophic violation of the fundamental spatial treaties outlined by the 7 rings and overseen by the Gosha family," Moxie protested, his voice cracking and rising to a high-pitched panic that made Luna's ears twitch in localized annoyance. He pointed a trembling, white-gloved finger at Goku, who was currently swallowing an entire slice of pizza whole without even bothering to chew, his throat making a cartoonish gulp sound. Living humans simply cannot possess this level of physical density without causing immediate atmospheric displacement and localized gravity fluctuations in the pride ring. Look at the office barometer, Blitz. Look at it, it's fluctuating wildly between heavy sulfur and imminent implosion. If the demon royalty or, Satan forbid, Lucifer's office finds out we are harboring an undocumented, energetic living entity who eats like a blue whale on a dynamic binge cycle, they will literally liquidate our assets, format our hard drives, and turn our skin into luxury luggage for the gluttony ring. Moxie's tail wrapped around his leg tightly, a clear sign of his absolute existential dread. Millie, standing next to him, was a complete contrast. A cheerful, energetic, and remarkably strong imp with a short, bobbed haircut and a bright red face. She simply laughed, leaning casually on the shaft of a massive battle axe that was nearly as tall as she was. She watched Goku eat with genuine fascination, entirely unbothered by Moxie's doomsday scenario. "Oh, calm your horns, Mox, look at him go." Honestly, I haven't seen anyone clear a plate with that kind of raw enthusiasm since the annual Harvest Slaughter festival back home in the Wrath Ring. He's kind of cute in a giant, muscle-bound, completely clueless stray dog sort of way. Look at those spiky tufts of hair, they're ridiculous. She waved her free hand, dismissed at Moxie's binder. Besides, if he can eat frozen pizza warmed by a flamethrower, he's tough enough for hell. Blitzo, meanwhile, was pacing back and forth across the small remaining floor space, his hands clasped tightly behind his back, his long tail whipping with manic energy. His chaotic mind was not processing spatial treaties or bureaucratic doom. It was processing raw, aggressive, capitalistic opportunity. He stopped pacing, his yellow eyes lighting up with a dangerous, manic joy as he violently slapped Goku on his remarkably muscular shoulder, nearly breaking his own blocky, crimson hand against the dense, godlike muscle fiber. "Shut up, Moxie. Nobody cares about the spatial treaties, the Gosha family, or your stupid, twitching barometer. What I see sitting right here, devouring our office emergency food supply, is a golden marketing opportunity handed to us by the god of absolute chaos. Think about the dynamic shifts, people. A giant, fearless, completely invulnerable human mascot. We can expand IMP services. We can target high-profile demon cartels, maybe even mid-level nobility. No more nickel and diming over cheating husbands. We're moving into corporate liquidation." Blitzo grabbed Goku's blocky face, forcing him to look at him, pizza crust still hanging from his mouth. "Hey, look at me, orange juice. You like the pizza. You want more. A lot more. All you gotta do is help us clear out a little competition down at the docks this afternoon, and I will personally buy you an entire bakery." Goku finally swallowed the last crust of the 7th pizza, wiping his mouth with the back of his massive hand as he let out a satisfied sigh that blew a loose paper stack entirely off Luna's reception desk. He looked up at Blitzo, his dark, innocent eyes sparkling with genuine amusement at the tiny imp's explosive and erratic personality. The pure, chaotic energy of Blitzo was actually quite refreshing compared to the sterile code of his previous world. "Well, the food was pretty good, even if it tasted a little bit like sulfur," Goku stated cheerfully, standing up to his full height and instantly dominating the small room, forcing Moxie to take a nervous step back. "But I don't really like hurting people unless they're actually bad guys who want to destroy things or hurt innocent people. But hey, if there are strong guys down at those docks you talked about, I'd love to go see what they can do. My body still feels a little bit stiff from my last dimensional trip, and a good warm-up fight sounds perfect right about now." Goku flexed his arms, the dynamic anime lines of his muscles contrasting sharply with the flatter, stylized look of the imps. From behind her desk, where she had been quietly watching the entire circus from behind the perceived safety of her smartphone screen, Luna let out a low, cynical snort. Her long, furry ears twitched violently as she shifted her crimson eyes away from a social media post to glare at Goku. Her large, bushy, silver-gray tail swished behind her chair, knocking over an empty soda can with a rhythmic thud. "Don't get your hopes up for a challenge, anime boy," Luna muttered, her voice a low, raspy drawl dripping with absolute boredom and her characteristic apathy. She was trying desperately to maintain her defensive wall of complete indifference, even as her sensitive hellhound instincts kept screaming that the entity in front of her was something profoundly unique. The guys down at the docks are just low-level mob thistles from the greed ring who think they're tough because they carry oversized shotguns and wear matching leather jackets. They're pathetic. You'll probably break them in 2 seconds flat without even trying. Luna then aggressively swiped her. Smartphone, cyberbullying a random sinner to regain her sense of normal. Within 20 minutes, Blitzo had fully committed to his chaotic new business venture, completely ignoring Moxie's continued frantic protests about planar stability and documented spatial treaties. He forced the entire IMP crew, including a deeply reluctant and complaining Luna, who argued that receptionists don't do dynamic field work, to pile into their tattered, grease-stained black utility van. Blitzo was determined to head down toward the industrial shipping districts of the lower rings, specifically aiming for the chaotic nexus where pride met greed, where a rival demon gang had been intercepting their human world contracts and aggressively muscling in on their turf. The van, which smelled heavily of old gunpowder, stale takeout, and Blitzo's questionable cologne, rattled violently as it sped down the cracked, blood-stained asphalt highways of the Pride Ring. It zoomed past twisted Gothic architecture, glowing neon adult entertainment clubs that advertised sins that made even Goku tilt his spiky head in confusion, and swarms of low-life sinners who scrambled out of the way of the vehicle's erratic and unsafe path. Goku was crammed into the very back of the van, his massive knees pressed against his chest as his spiky hair constantly bumped against the metal ceiling with every pothole they hit, creating a rhythmic thud-thud-thud. Yet, despite the extreme lack of space, his face remained split into a wide, fascinated grin as he stared out the cracked rear window. He watched the hellish landscape fly by with the pure, childlike wonder of a tourist rather than a powerful warrior standing in the depths of eternal damnation. Whoa, look at that giant lizard creature over there. He's huge. And wow, that building is completely shaped like a skull. Do you think anyone strong lives in there? This place is wild. The sky is always red and there's no sun, just that big glowing white star thing. It's all so aggressive. Goku exclaimed, his voice filled with genuine curiosity, causing Moxie to wince in the front seat. Moxie was sitting shotgun, desperately checking the ammunition clips of his various submachine guns and pistols, his tail twitching with a mixture of motion sickness from Blitzo's aggressive driving and profound existential dread regarding their passenger. "I still cannot believe we are doing this," Moxie groaned, rubbing his temples frantically as he looked back at Goku through the cracked rearview mirror, seeing the massive human wave cheerfully at a passing sinner. "We are bringing a living human anomaly, undocumented, mind you, into a hot combat zone filled with heavy-caliber angelic weaponry and volatile dark magic. If he gets killed, Blitz, his soul will be permanently bound to this ring, and the resulting spiritual mass displacement echo will probably cause a localized reality tier that collapses our office building and formats our entire customer database." Millie, who was happily sharpening her battle axe on a grinding stone in the middle seat, just laughed. "Oh, chill out, Mox. Let the big guy have some fun. I want to see what he can do." Luna was sitting on a metal crate next to Goku in the back, her long legs crossed as she kept her gaze fixed on her phone's screen, scrolling through a feed with aggressive indifference. However, despite her perceived apathy, her long, furry ears were constantly swiveling toward the Saiyan, tracking every shift of his weight and every breath he took. The warmth radiating from his massive body was intense, making her fur feel static-charged. "Relax, fat-ass," Luna muttered to Moxie without looking up, her tail swishing against the metal floor of the van. "The human doesn't feel like he's going to die easily. Honestly, his energy is so loud and chaotic it's giving me a headache. It feels like standing next to a roaring campfire that's constantly trying to explode." Goku turned his spiky head toward her, his grin widening as he rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. "Oh, sorry about that. Is my kai too loud? I can try to suppress it a bit if it's bothering your ears. Back home, we learn how to hide our energy completely so the bad guys can't track us. It's pretty useful. Watch this," Goku stated, his expression shifting to focus as he dropped his breathing into a deep meditative rhythm, visualizing a calm pond. Within a single second, the colossal, burning heat of Goku's physical and spiritual presence completely vanished from the back of the van. It left behind an absolute, eerie void of silence that was far more unnerving than his loud energy had been. Luna dropped her phone into her lap, her crimson eyes snapping wide open and staring at Goku in utter shock, as her highly sensitive hellhound instincts suddenly registered him as completely non-existent. He was sitting right in front of her, but his grid signature had vanished entirely from her senses. It was like looking at a ghost, her ears pinned flat against her skull and her tail dropped in a sudden wave of primal confusion. "What the? How did you do that?" Luna demanded, her voice a rough whisper as she leaned closer to inspect his orange gi. "You completely disappeared from my senses. Even the highest lords of the Gosha family can't mask their presence that perfectly. Are you using dark magic?" Goku simply laughed, his massive energy instantly snapping back into place with a warm, comfortable ripple that made her fur tingle again. "Ha ha! Nope, no magic. It just takes a little bit of focus. I can teach you how to do it sometime if you want. It's really useful for taking naps without anyone bothering you." Blitzo looked back through the rearview mirror, his yellow eyes narrowing into a dynamic, mischievous, and highly protective glare, as he saw his adopted hellhound daughter actually conversing with a human entity without actively trying to murder him. "Stay focused, people. We are approaching the target zone." The tattered black utility van screeched to a violent, rubber-burning halt behind a row of rusted, blood-spattered shipping containers down at the Imp City industrial docks. Here, the murky, dark red waters of the river lapped aggressively against the cracked concrete piers, carrying floating debris from the upper rings. The air in this industrial sector was remarkably heavy, thick with the overwhelming stench of salt water, diesel exhaust, and burning sulfur that made Moxie instantly cough into his sleeve. The entire area was bathed in the eerie, flickering light of green neon spotlights hanging from massive overhead cranes, casting long, distorted shadows across the wet ground. Blitzo killed the engine with a theatrical twist of the key, instantly drawing a pair of heavy automatic pistols from beneath his tattered trench coat. He kicked the side door open, stepping out into the damp air with a manic flourish. "All right, my little murder babies." The target is a group of low-life shark demons from the greed ring who think they can muscle in on our human world assassination turf and steal our hard-earned corporate contracts. Remember, no survivors, make it look spectacular for our social media updates. And for the love of God, don't let them scratch the van's new paint job. The IMP crew moved out into the flickering green neon light with practiced, lethal efficiency born from years of violent operations. Millie leaped onto the side of a rusted shipping container with a joyful laugh, her heavy battle axe raised over her shoulder, her tail swishing with excitement. Moxie quickly took up a tactical sniper position behind a stack of metal crates, adjusting his glasses and checking his sights with a nervous but focused sigh. Goku stepped out of the back of the van last, stretching his long legs and looking around the dark, industrial landscape with a casual curiosity that completely unfitted the tense atmosphere. He was treating a potential war zone like an afternoon stroll in the park, his bright orange gi practically glowing against the gritty, dark textures of the docks. His relaxed posture instantly drew the attention of a group of 7 massive, muscular shark demons who had just emerged from a nearby warehouse, their heavy webbed feet slapping against the concrete. The demons were clad in heavy leather jackets covered in spikes, their blue-gray skin glistening with river grease, and they carried large, double-barreled shotguns that hummed with a faint green light. Well, look what the portal dragged into our territory," the lead shark demon rasped, his voice sounding like 2 grinding stones as his rows of razor-sharp teeth twisted into a cruel, arrogant sneer. His yellow eyes locked onto Goku, completely ignoring the tiny imps hiding in the shadows. "A lost human in a bright orange jumpsuit? What is this, a joke from the upper management? Did a circus lose its prize athletic bimbo? Shoot him first, boys, then we'll turn the little red shits into chum." Before Blitzo could even shout a defensive command or give an order to fall back, 3 of the massive shark demons leveled their shotguns and fired a synchronized volley of heavy, green-glowing buckshot directly at Goku's chest from point-blank range. The blast was deafening, filling the narrow space between the shipping containers with a thick, choking cloud of acrid black smoke and green sparks that illuminated the dark corners of the pier. Blitzo let out a sharp gasp, his pistols dropping slightly as his tail whipped frantically. Ah, damn it. I knew I shouldn't have trusted the anime guy to be our mascot. He just got turned into a pile of human ground beef on his first day. Luna's breath caught in her throat, her crimson eyes widening as she took an involuntary step forward from the van door, her phone slipping an inch in her grip as a sudden, unexpected wave of genuine concern washed over her furry face. However, as thick black smoke slowly cleared under the green neon spotlights, the entire harbor area fell into a state of absolute, stunned silence. Goku was standing in the exact same spot, his heavy black boots firmly planted on the concrete, completely unbothered and unharmed. The heavy fabric of his orange gi was slightly scuffed with a bit of black soot, but his chest was entirely uninjured. A small pile of flattened, crumpled lead pellets lay scattered around his feet, having completely lost all their kinetic energy and momentum upon impact with his divine, godlike skin. Goku reached down, casually picking up one of the flattened pellets and inspecting it with a slight pout, turning it over between his massive fingers. Huh. These little metal things are pretty fast, but they don't really pack a punch at all. Is this the best weapon you guys have down here? Back home, even the standard training bots in Bulma's gravity room hit way harder than this. I didn't even feel that. The lead shark demon's yellow eyes nearly popped out of his skull, his massive tail trembling with sudden primal terror as he stared at the invulnerable human who had just treated a shotgun blast like a light dust storm. The absolute terror that gripped the shark demon gang turned into a complete rout within a matter of seconds, shattering their tough criminal reputation. The lead demon frantically attempted to chamber another round into his smoking shotgun, his webbed fingers trembling so violently that the green glowing shell slipped from his hand, dropping onto the wet concrete with a tiny metallic click. What the hell are you? You're not a human. You're some kind of high-level overlord in a stupid costume sent by Lucifer, the demon shrieked, backing away so fast that he tripped over his own heavy tail, crashing hard against a rusted metal barrel that rolled away with a loud clang. Goku simply chuckled, stepping forward with a completely relaxed posture, his hands resting lightly on his hips as his spiky hair caught the green light. Ha ha! No, I told you before, I'm just a Saiyan from Earth. But since you guys started this fight without even introducing yourselves, it's only fair that I get to throw a punch too. Don't worry, I'll hold back a lot so I don't break your harbor. Goku dropped into a simple, classic martial arts stance, his left foot sliding back half a step as he lightly brought his right fist forward, aligning his center gravity exactly like he had done thousands of times during training. He didn't channel a single drop of his divine Kai, nor did he trigger any of his glowing, world-shaking transformations. He simply executed a basic, textbook straight punch toward the empty air in front of him. The sheer, unadulterated physical speed and mass of his motion were so immense that it created an instantaneous, highly visible kinetic vacuum wave that erupted from his knuckles like a sonic boom. The absolute air pressure wave tore down the narrow alleyway between the shipping containers, ripping the heavy steel doors right off their hinges, and sending a massive, 15-ton industrial crane in the background tilting backward into the dark red river with a monumental, splashing wave that drenched the surrounding piers. The 7 massive shark demons didn't even have time to scream or raise their weapons. The kinetic pressure wave caught them full force, lifting their heavy frames right off the ground and launching them across the harbor docks like a collection of plastic toys caught in a hurricane. They crashed through the thick wooden pier railings, shattering them into kindling, and skipped across the surface of the dark red water like flat stones before finally landing in a tangled, groaning pile on top of a distant garbage barge that was drifting slowly downstream. Blitzo, Millie, and Moxie stood completely frozen in their respective combat positions, their weapons raised but entirely useless as they stared at the absolute path of destruction Goku had just carved with a single, unpowered swing of his arm. The concrete ground where the wave had traveled was scraped clean of grease and rust. Luna slowly lowered her phone, her mouth slightly open as her crimson eyes tracked the distant garbage barge where the mob gang was currently weeping and groaning in pain. She looked back at Goku, her long furry ears twitching violently as a strange, unreadable expression passed over her face, a mixture of profound awe, primal respect, and an unexpected flutter of genuine excitement that made her bushy silver-gray tail give a sudden, involuntary wag behind her chair. Goku spun around, a cheerful, innocent grin returning to his face as he rubbed the back of his spiky hair with a chuckle. "Hugh, that felt pretty good. My joints are finally starting to feel loose again after that long ride. Hey, short blue shirt guy, did I do a good job clearing out your competition? Can we go get some more of that round cheese bread now? My stomach eye." Starting to make noise again. Blitzo simply stared at him, his yellow eyes wide as saucers as he slowly began to clack his teeth together in a manic, terrifyingly happy grin. "Oh, we are going to be billionaires," Blitzo whispered. The return trip to the IMP headquarters was spent in a state of absolute, hyperactive celebration led entirely by Blitzo, who spent the entire drive standing on the center console of the van, wildly gesturing out the window and screaming about how IMP was going to become the most feared assassination corporation in the history of the afterlife. Moxie was quietly writing down a frantic list of dynamic liability insurance waivers and property damage reports in the passenger seat, his tail twitching with a mixture of awe and terrifying stress, while Millie happily played a celebratory rhythm on the dashboard using her battle axe handle. Goku was back in his cramped spot in the rear, happily humming a tune, but this time, the space next to him felt notably different. The thick, defensive wall of apathy that usually surrounded the office receptionist had experienced a significant structural crack during the harbor incident. Luna had slid down from her metal crate, sitting remarkably close to the massive Saiyan on the tattered floor of the van. She had completely abandoned her smartphone, keeping it slid away in her pocket as her sharp crimson eyes remained fixed on Goku's face, her long, furry ears swiveled fully forward to catch his every breath. "So, anime boy," Luna started, her voice dropping into a slightly softer, though still characteristically raspy tone as she rested her chin on her clawed hand, her tail swishing with a slow rhythm. "That little trick you did back at the docks, the sonic wave punch. You seriously didn't use any magic for that, no demonic contracts, no angelic weapons, just raw muscle and speed." Goku turned his head, his dark, innocent eyes meeting hers with a cheerful clarity that made her momentarily look away. "Yep, just a normal punch. Back home, we train our bodies under intense gravity so that our standard movements become super strong. If I actually use my full power, the sky usually turns yellow and the ground starts to float. It makes a big mess, so I try not to do it unless I have to." Luna let out a low, fascinated whistle, her tail swishing against the metal floor of the van with a soft, rhythmic thud that filled the quiet spaces between Blitzo's shouting. "That's actually insane," she muttered, a tiny, rare smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth, revealing a glimpse of her white fangs. "Most of the guys in this ring think they're tough because they carry oversized guns or have a fancy noble title from some old demon lineage, but they're all just fragile parasites who hide behind their bodyguards and magic shields. It's kind of refreshing to see someone who can just take a bullet to the chest and not even care because their skin is too tough." Goku laughed, leaning back against the metal wall of the van, completely comfortable with her close proximity. "Ha ha. Well, it's always more fun to rely on your own strength. Training is the best part of life because you can always find a new limit to break. Hey, you look pretty agile yourself. Your reflexes seem really sharp when you're moving around. Do you do a lot of martial arts training too?" Luna's ears gave a sudden, self-conscious twitch, her face heating up slightly under her silver-gray fur as she looked away, clearing her throat with a rough sound to mask her embarrassment. Not really. I mostly just kick people in the groin when they try to touch my desk without permission, or tear their throats out if they get too annoying during office hours. Hellhound stuff, you know. We're born with good instincts, but nobody ever really taught me how to use them properly." She looked back at him through her messy hair, her voice dropping a bit lower. "But I guess I wouldn't mind seeing how you train sometime. If you're staying around the office for a while, that is. It might be better than sitting around scrolling through Twitter all day." Goku's eyes lit up with immediate excitement, his massive hand reaching out to pat her shoulder, completely unbothered by her defensive posture. "That's awesome. I'd love to show you some basic stances. Training with a partner is way better than training alone, and you've got great potential." Luna turned her head back to the window, but her tail continued to wag softly against the floor. The following morning, the relative peace of the IMP office was violently shattered once again, but this time it wasn't due to a gang of street thugs or a local riot. The air in the reception lobby suddenly grew incredibly cold, thick with the heavy scent of ancient parchment, expensive lavender oils, and an overwhelming, oppressive aura of ancient dark magic that made Moxie's hair stand on end. A beautiful, swirling portal of cosmic stardust. And deep blue flame tore open directly in the center of the room, scorching the linoleum floor and sending papers flying. Stepping out of the flames with an elegant, aristocratic grace was a tall, slender avian demon of immense nobility. It was Prince Stolas of the Gosha family, wearing a flowing regal blue cape, a white ruffled collar, and a tall, feathered top hat that nearly brushed the buzzing fluorescent ceiling lights. His four glowing red eyes swept over the messy room, instantly skipping past a frantic Blitzo to lock directly onto Son Goku, who was currently sitting on the cracked leather couch, balancing an empty coffee pot on his nose out of pure boredom. "Oh, my dear Blitzy, what a fascinatingly chaotic little nest you run here," Stolas chimed, his voice a smooth, elegant British baritone that carried a subtle, dangerous undercurrent of absolute royal authority. He stepped toward the couch, his long, feathered fingers tracing the air as he inspected Goku's massive frame with an expression of intense, scholarly curiosity. The global planar boundaries have been whispering all morning about a massive, undocumented physical presence residing in the Pride Ring, causing ripples in the local gravity grid. I simply had to come see for myself. Tell me, handsome stranger, what sector of the mortal realm did you crawl out of to possess such a delightfully delicious density? Your physical structure is simply marvelous. Goku set the coffee pot down, blinking up at the giant bird prince before standing up to his full height, his posture completely relaxed despite the heavy royal magic pressing down on the room like a physical weight. "Oh, hi, I'm Goku. I kind of got lost through a purple hole in the sky after my last fight. You look like a really fancy bird, and wow, your energy is super smooth. It's like a deep well of cold water, very different from the imps." Stolas let out a soft, delighted chuckle, his four red eyes sparkling with immense amusement at the human's absolute lack of subservience or fear. "Smooth like cold water. Oh, how charmingly poetic. Most low-born imps throw themselves to the floor and weep or beg for mercy when I enter the room, yet you treat me like a common house guest or an old friend. It is remarkably refreshing." Blitzo instantly shoved his way between them, his tail whipping frantically as he tried to protect his new business asset from royal interference. "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hands off the muscle-bound anime boy, Stolas. He's under exclusive corporate contract with IMP now. We use him for high-profile liquidations, brand protection, and office security. Don't go trying to turn him into one of your weird royal projects or whatever the hell you do in that giant castle of yours." Stolas ignored Blitzo entirely, leaning closer to Goku until his feathered beak was inches from the Saiyan's face, his cosmic aura flaring slightly. "Tell me, son Goku. The ancient grimoires indicate that your specific presence shouldn't even be structurally possible within the mortal hell axis. Your soul carries the mass and energy weight of a dying star. If you were to truly unleash your full potential within these rings, the local reality engine would suffer a catastrophic format event. Do you intend to destroy my kingdom, or are you simply here to play?" Goku met his intense gaze with a clear, honest smile, his fists resting lightly on his hips as his spiky hair bristled slightly. "Destroy your kingdom? No way. I only fight to protect things and find strong guys to challenge. I have no interest in breaking your world or hurting anyone. But hey, since you seem to know a lot about magic and space, do you know if there's an arena around here where we can really let loose without making a mess? I'd love to see what you can do." Stolas' eyes widened slightly, a highly intrigued, elegant smile gracing his features. "An arena? Oh, my dear boy, you have no idea what kind of trouble you're asking for in this world." Later that afternoon, after Stolas had departed through his cosmic portal with a cryptic promise to monitor the delightful anomaly, Goku decided to fulfill his promise to Luna. Since the office parking lot was too public and constantly plagued by drive-by shootings from rival imp gangs, they headed up to the flat, gravel-covered rooftop of the office building, where the tattered IMP billboard cast long, jagged shadows under the crimson sky. The heavy sulfur wind blew through Luna's silver-gray fur as she stood across from Goku, her hands tucked into her pockets, her expression trying desperately to look bored despite the fact that her ears were completely locked onto his movements. "All right, anime boy," Luna said, a nervous edge in her voice that she masked with a rough snort. "Let's see what you've got, but don't expect me to wear a stupid white gi or bow to you. I'm a hellhound, not a karate student." Goku smiled warmly, dropping into a basic, completely unpowered defensive stance, his hands raised lightly in front of his chest. "Haha, no problem. We don't need any fancy clothes. The first thing you need to learn is how to feel the natural flow of your body's kinetic movement. Instead of just swinging your claws out of anger, you want to focus your weight into your center grid line. Here, try to hit me with a normal kick, but focus all your energy into the precise moment your heel connects with the target." Luna blinked, her crimson eyes narrowing as her pride kicked in. "Oh, you want me to kick you? Don't cry if I break one of your ribs, human." She sprinted forward across the gravel, her clawed boots digging into the stone as she executed a swift, high-velocity roundhouse kick aimed straight at Goku's neck, her long tail providing perfect counterbalance in the air. Goku didn't dodge or block. He simply stood perfectly still, allowing the heavy, fur-covered boot to connect directly with the side of his neck with a sharp, flesh-against-flesh thud. The impact wave blew a cloud of gravel dust outwards, but Goku's head didn't even budge an inch, his neck muscles remaining as solid as an anvil. Luna felt a sharp vibration rattle up her entire leg, causing her to stagger backward with a low hiss of frustration, rubbing her ankle. "Ow. What the hell are you made of, titanium?" Goku laughed, dropping his stance and walking over to her. "Haha, close. But see, you threw that kick with a lot of speed, but your weight was leaning too far backward because you were worried about losing your balance. Look at your feet. If you lock your rear heel into the ground grid at a 45-degree angle, your body becomes a solid anchor. Try it again, but this time, trust your balance." Goku gently guided her foot with his hand, adjusting her posture until her hips were aligned perfectly with her center of gravity. Luna stood frozen for a moment, her long ears burning red as she felt the immense, gentle strength in his grip, her heart thumping against her chest in a way that had absolutely nothing to do with combat. She looked up at his encouraging, honest face, her cynical defenses completely melting away for the first time in her life. She dropped into the adjusted stance, feeling a sudden, unexpected sensation of immense physical stability ripple through her limbs. Like this?" she asked softly, her tail giving a tiny, tentative swish. Goku stepped back, flashing her a giant, proud thumb up. "Perfect! Now try swinging that punch again. I bet it feels twice as strong." The training session continued for over 3 hours, with Goku patiently teaching Luna the fundamental laws of energy conservation, weight distribution, and defensive shielding. By the time the massive white pentagram in the sky began to fade into a deep, bruised purple twilight, Luna was completely exhausted, her silver-gray fur soaked with sweat as she collapsed onto a concrete ledge, panting heavily with her tongue slightly out. Goku sat down right next to her, completely pristine and full of energy, holding 2 large bottles of cheap Hellhound soda he had raided from the office breakroom fridge. He handed one to her with a cheerful smile, which she accepted with a low, grateful grunt, chugging the liquid down with an eager intensity. "Man, you're a really fast learner, Luna," Goku stated, looking out over the flickering neon lights of Imp City as the evening street traffic began to roar below. "Your reflexes are actually way better than most human martial artists I've met. If you keep practicing those anchoring stances, you'll be able to throw guys twice your size without even trying." Luna set the empty bottle down, wiping her mouth with the back of her furry hand as she looked at her clawed fingers, feeling a strange, deep sense of physical accomplishment that she had never experienced while sitting behind her reception desk. "Thanks," she muttered softly, her voice carrying a rare, vulnerable sincerity that she usually kept buried behind 10 layers of sarcasm. "Honestly, nobody's ever really taken the time to teach me anything like this. Usually people just look at me like I'm a broken tool or an angry stray animal that needs to be put in a cage. Blitz tries to be a dad, but he's a chaotic idiot who doesn't understand anything that doesn't involve murder or horses." Goku turned his head, his dark eyes looking at her with a profound, non-judgmental empathy that made her breath catch. "Well, people who look at you like that don't know what they're talking about. Strength isn't about being angry or scary. It's about having a good heart and wanting to improve yourself so you can protect the people you care about. I can tell you have a really strong spirit, Luna. You just need to give yourself a chance to grow." Luna stared at him, her crimson eyes wide as she felt a warm, heavy weight lift off her shoulders, her long, furry ears drooping slightly as a soft, genuine smile finally broke across her face, completely transforming her sharp features. She leaned slightly closer to him, her silver shoulder fur brushing against his orange gi as she looked back out at the city. "You're a really weird human, Goku," she whispered, her tail gently curling around his leg on the concrete ledge in a soft, protective gesture that she didn't even try to hide this time. "But I'm really glad you fell through that hole in our alleyway." Goku laughed, placing a large, comforting hand over her head, lightly scratching behind her ears in a way that made her let out a low, involuntary purring sound that she instantly tried to cover up with a cough. "Ha ha, me too. This place is crazy, but the people here are really fun. I can't wait to see what kind of adventure we get into tomorrow."